Good to see you.
Good to see you,
This
Mr.
is
C.
this is our first podcast. It's one of the series of 9 for our revision course for the RS short course.
Religious Studies.
Yes.
Short course, 4 topics. Let's crack into the first one, Mr. C. I'm ready for it.
Yeah. Well, the first one is believing in God.
Believing in God. Yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering, when you go into a cathedral or you go into some church, suddenly you get this sort of tingle down the back of your neck. What sort of feeling is that, Mr.
Let's get straight into this. We're looking at keywords. The keyword or words that you're thinking of is that feeling of awe and wonder, that feeling of sanctity in a religious building, on a mountaintop, a feeling of awe and wonder, sometimes referred to as a numinous feeling. Over to you.
Numinous feeling, yes, good. Right. God.
Yes.
3 main issues there for Christians as to what they believe his characteristics are.
Know what you're thinking, know what you mean. Exactly. Christians believe that God is all-powerful, potent. All-powerful, the key word is omnipotent. They also believe that God knows all, a bit like a scientist. That's what makes you think of omniscient, that God is omniscient. He is all-knowing. And finally,
he's quite a nice chap as well, isn't he?
He's
kind,
nice,
all
he's
loving.
kind, he's loving, he's like the Pope who says, bene, bene, makes you think of course, benevolent. God is good, kind and loving. He is benevolent. 3 characteristics of God in terms of Christian thought.
Thank you. Now, sometimes atheists will say to Christians, there's a lot of problems with the evil and suffering.
Yeah, they will try it on.
And they talk in terms of moral and also natural evil.
Yeah.
What's the distinction there?
Well, an atheist, and of course by that we mean someone who does not believe in God, they will talk about moral evil, and by that we mean suffering which is caused by human intention. If I was to slap you over the head, Mr. Cordeaux, that would be, yes, just like that, that would be an intended act to create suffering. That would be moral evil. However, if you were blown away by a hurricane, shall we say, or
surely not,
drowned possibly as a consequence of a tsunami, that would be a natural disaster. Hence, they call it natural evil. Any more questions, Mr. C?
Well, now we've talked about an atheist. I wonder, what about somebody who is not quite sure whether God exists or not? They're sort of worried about it and maybe need a bit more proof.
Sitting a little bit on the fence?
What's that?
Well, if you're sitting on the fence, 1, it's painful. But 2, when you're sitting on the fence, you are known as an agnostic. You're not sure, is there a God? Isn't there a God? Is there life after death? Is there not? What you need, of course, is evidence. Then you could get off the wretched fence and land in the flower bed.
Good. And if you were in that flower bed and it was on the side of God,
it smells beautiful.
God's flowers,
Yep.
What sort of person would you be believing in God? What would you call that person? The big T?
Smell the roses. What it is if you're a believer, you are a theist. Not to be confused with atheist. We can see the confusion. Believer, theist. Forget the A.
Thank you. Now, I might sometimes, or if I was, for instance, an agnostic, and something happened in my life, I might have some sort of experience that changed me a little bit, and I became a theist.
Yeah. Well, that would be a religious experience of some kind, and that particular type of religious experience is a conversion experience, an experience that brings about an internal change, making you turn and believe in God. That's one of the many different types of religious experience. Of course, there are others.
There are indeed.
Indeed.
What about the design argument, Miss Fay? Because that's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah. One of my favourites.
Can you do that? Can you do that very concisely? Because
concisely.
It's difficult.
We go back in time. We talk about St. Thomas Aquinas, who in the 13th century said that the world, the universe, looks like it was designed. Therefore, there must have been a designer, hence God. This idea of the design picked up by your friend and mine, William Paley, eminent Victorian philosopher. He said, it's like finding a watch in the desert. Look at that watch. Looks like it was designed. Must have been a designer. Just like the universe looks like it was designed. It's so fitting together. It's so complex and beautiful. Everything fits. Must have been designed. Who's the designer, Mr. C? Who is it?
It's God.
Exactly.
Because it's not just by chance, Mr. A.
No. Planned. Argument from design.
Thank you.
Lovely.
What about this tricky one? Causation.
Well, it's a bit like the dominoes. You knock one domino over, it collapses onto another, and another, and another. It's the idea that nothing happens again by chance. Everything is caused. Scientists believe that there are no accidents. Everything is a result of something previously happening. Well, if that's the case, then the universe itself must have been caused. What is the great causer? The prime mover, you might say. The causer of the universe is God. Of course, the atheist then says, yes, that's all very well. What caused God? No answer, or is there? Let's find out.
Next one coming up. If I feel a bit worried sometimes, Mr. A.
Well, we all do.
Yeah.
Don't you know?
Maybe sometimes the old hands come together and we go for a bit of a communion with God. We
Yeah.
try to contact God.
Communication with the divine. Yeah.
What's that?
Well, that's when you get on the knees, put your hands together, and you pray. That is prayer, the action of communication with God.
Contacting usually through words, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Sometimes just thinking it, though.
And lastly, we have on these definitions
Yeah.
something which breaks the laws of nature, Mr. A.
Well, again, we're talking about another type of religious experience. If the laws of nature are broken, if that which scientists say is impossible actually happens, then we call it a miracle. A miracle. And we say God has become involved. That is divine intervention. A little bit like your friend and mine, Saul, being blinded, regaining his sight. That was perhaps a miracle. He became, after that, known as Saint Paul. He became a Christian. Another conversion experience.
Thank you, Mr. A.
No pleasure. No problem.